Yeah. Chair Grotenhouse,
Here.
Commissioner Stevens,
Here.
Commissioner Parker,
Here.
Commissioner Richey,
Here.
and Commissioner Degg. Carol's here.
Here.
So we have a quorum.
Has everyone had a chance to see the agenda for tonight? And if so, do we have any comments? No? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
We have two commissioners who cannot vote, so Commissioner Parker may have to second most of the motion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. I second it. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Should we have a vote? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? We still have an echo, but review and approval of the minutes from the February 2nd meeting. Is there any additions or comments or anything? If not, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from February 2nd, 2021?
Move we approve the minutes.
I will second it.
Great.
Perfect. All right. Do we have all those in favor say aye? Aye. All those opposed? Looks like the ayes have it. All right. So Wendy, certificates of appropriateness. We've got South Brookside Avenue to talk about.
I'm just going to make the staff report a little bit brief because we're having a little bit of a technical issue. So the property owners are Daniel and Donna Brashears. They have a property, a single family home that was constructed circa 1910. They took ownership of the property after they inherited it from their father in August of 2020. The applicants are proposing to demolish their two-story dwelling in order to clear the site. Deferred maintenance, various deficiencies, and a lack of infrastructure upgrades are the primary concerns of these property owners. While the site may be used for future development, there are no immediate plans proposed at this time. So all of you should have received a structural engineer's report.
Yeah.
And just to run through the overall integrity, the dwelling remains in situ. The building retains its original orientation, massing, and roof line. It does remain part of a residential neighborhood, though it is abutting a religious institution. The dwelling retains minimal original materials, limited original workmanship remains. The building retains some connection with the surrounding houses, and it is a representation of early 20th century development in what was at the time unincorporated Western Jackson County. Regarding the demolition request, the property does remain a single family home, so the use has not changed. The building reflects some of its original early 20th century appearance, but material modifications and enclosure of the porch have affected the overall integrity. It is not currently a dangerous building. The property, the staff report says it's currently vacant. The property is developed. The building suffers from some structural and cosmetic issues due to prolonged deferred maintenance, lack of infrastructure, and water infiltration. The dwelling is an unlikely candidate for salvage. A structural engineer's report was submitted. The applicant proposes to clear the lot with no immediate plans for development, and loss of the building would impact the area. However, the dwelling does abut a religious institution along with a commercial district that's fairly close by and is not wholly surrounded by residential properties. Staff is asking for commission's discretion with the understanding that there are numerous issues that were highlighted in the report, along with the photos that were part of your packet. And I will go through all of the photos now so you can get a good look. And Mr. and Ms. Shears are both here. If they have any comments they'd like to make about the photos or reference them again, I'd be happy to go back to them. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of go through what they submitted. And let's see if I can get this to in the other direction here. Trying to turn the camera.
If I could make just a quick note, Donna is my sister, and we have two other sisters, and they were given, this property was given to the four of us as inheritance from my father. So there's four of us total that that will be dividing this up.
Well, this is just going to be. Oh my goodness, did I lose you? Flip camera, there we go. Had to be on here somewhere. Okay. So I am just going to, in a very untechnological way, flip through the photos here. Try to get as much of it in the screen here.
That is approximately 12 foot from the front door, and it is a flooring, wood flooring, and it is rotted through. About a 4 foot wide by 10, 12 foot long strip. Floor joists below it are deteriorated also.
You know, I checked this about 20 times before we started the meeting to make sure this worked, and it worked just fine. And now it doesn't want to work. Hold on just a moment, please. It's just going to be an
What are your
evening
plans
of
after
not.
demolition?
Well, we don't know exactly what it'll end up. My sisters go to the church next door, and it would either be for a parking lot. And just to be blunt, my three sisters are not married, and they are also considering down the road maybe building a slab-on grade on that property right next to the church. As they get older, they're about ready to retire, that they would be at church, as where they wouldn't have to do a lot of traveling to get to the church. Now, also, the east property line of our property abuts the parking lot of a threeplex that is there on Independence Avenue, and that butts up to the church's property. So the only residential property is to the north, and that's Don Sapola's house there on the north of us. And then on the south is the church, and then to the west is the street, and to the east is the threeplex.
When
Can
was
everyone see
property
these
last
okay?
occupied? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm just running through the photos, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Bashirs. But like I said, if there's anything you want to see specifically, I can go back.
I was gonna say I can't really see them on your screen, but I have my email pulled up, and I was also like looking on my screen. But on here, it's kind of not very beneficial to see them that way, at least for me.
That's what I'm doing. I pulled up
Okay.
your email and are looking at my other computer.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it that way too. Sure.
Okay. Well, for the benefit of anyone who might be watching at home, these are the photos.
And Wendy, I'm on a phone call watching photos on my computer.
Okay, that's good. So there are multiple photos that were submitted. I don't know if Mr. Bashirs would like to, if there's anything specific you'd like to address, but I know that there was a concern about the lack of sewer on that property.
Yes, the thing about it is I believe that what had happened is they caught that it had not been connected, or that there's a septic tank on the property. And I think she just passed over a minute ago the picture of the septic tank. When it was put in, the septic tank was put in the sewer was ran to the property line, actually, here's what it says. By Mr. C.E. Shepherd, I ran the sewer as far as the sidewalk for LT Strupp. Now, that is 38 foot from the house, and the septic tank was left and is still in the backyard. In the demolition process, I have figured a price to break in the top of the septic tank and fill it full of dirt, which is a code that, and I'm a plumber by trade, so that's why I look at things from the plumbing side of it. And also, there's no line coming into the house, so the sewer would have to be run from the back of where the sidewalk used to be up alongside the house on the south side of the house, which would, that wall's pretty shaky wall anyway, it's got cracks in it, and then go in. The other thing that I want to bring to the point is the water line. The water line is old galvanized, 3/4 inch, probably back from when the water main first came in. And it needs to be replaced and put copper in it if we was to leave the building setting. Once again, you're going to have to go under that front porch, which is going to be a tough job. It'll have to be probably bored, that part of it, and run a new water line in from out there at the main. Okay, and I think that covers the plumbing side of it. The other concern that I have is underneath the kitchen. The kitchen is an addition. It is not built of stone foundation. It is a concrete poured with concrete block up so far, and then another piece of concrete short wall set on top of it. I've never seen anything quite like it. But from the outside on the north side, and she's been showing you pictures of that, there's nothing there. There's open holes that go back in about 12 inches, and then a plywood wall has been set on that under the kitchen. So I wish we didn't have COVID and you could take a 5-minute walk and you'd see it's in terrible shape. The plumbing, when they took the plumbing out, they cut through the floor joist, and up in that back east bedroom, the floor has dropped. I set a laser in there. The floor has dropped 2.5 inches in a 14-foot span because they cut the floor joist and to put in plumbing, and then the plumbing now has been taken out. But it's got some structural problems. In the basement, as she has went through them, you could see right there in the picture she's showing right there, there's a hole that goes in through and into that basement, which is about 32 inches from that hole you see to the basement underneath the kitchen. Now, the reason my dad put the siding on it and put the windows on the upper is, and I don't know when, I just know my sister Donna here, she kind of helped mom and dad with their bills, got a citation, a notice from the city that the siding was bad and that the windows were bad on the upstairs. Now the windows are bad downstairs because he put new metal windows upstairs, which drew from the old wooden ones. And he put siding on it. Underneath this siding is asbestos siding. And I have a quote on, and I just have that because, we've hired a demolition company, $3,100 worth of asbestos and tape with asbestos tracing in it on the ductwork in the basement. So it does have some environmental hazard there too. Any other questions I could answer for you?
What does the immediate neighbor to the north think about demolishing the property?
He wanted to buy it from me until he seen the inside of it, and he said, "Boy, it needs to be gone."
Okay.
Sir, when was the building last occupied?
Okay, last occupied. Hang on, I'm sorry, I got notes. Dale Thurston, which was before my dad. He bought the house in April the 5th of 1990, and my dad bought it from him on December the 31st of 2003. And Mr. Thurston was in there just before my dad bought it.
Mr.
So
Thurston,
it hasn't lived in since 2003 then?
might possibly be 2004, because I think Mr. Thurston lived in it after Daddy bought it from him until he died, because he didn't want to leave the property. Him and his wife had both lived there. His wife had passed away earlier. So probably the latest would have been 2000, maybe 4 or maybe 5, but I don't think any beyond that.
So the reason for the shape it's in is 16 years of no one taking care of it. My dad, I'll just tell you a little story about him. He bought it in 2003. In 2000, he was working for me for Brashears Inc., a plumbing company. We were licensed there in Independence, and he was working in Lee Summit, fell and broke his leg, found he had cancer. They had to take off his left leg, hip, and pelvis. And so he bought this thinking that it was pretty good shape, and he found out it wasn't. So they couldn't move there by the church where they went to church. And so he couldn't, and my dad wouldn't let us help him. We tried to encourage him to let us help him work on it, but he said he'd do it himself, and he never got it done. So that's the reason it's in the type of shape it's in.
Was your dad's intention to maybe rent the place, to refurbish it and rent it at some point, or let your family live there?
I think he wanted my mom and him to live there for a while. The problem was Mom had been diagnosed before 2000, when he lost his leg. Mom had been diagnosed with dementia for about 15 years, and her mind was really starting to fade bad, and she couldn't take care of her daily operations without his help. He knew he had cancer, and we thought we got it on, and we did, but he just was afraid that he couldn't take care of her, so he thought if they were closer to church, that the people from church, and also they wouldn't have to do much driving. They could just walk to church. And us kids were helping bring in food to them anyway. And that's about the only time they ate there at the last, was when we stayed there with them and fed them.
But that was in their house on 28th Terrace.
Yeah, 28th Terrace, not here.
They never actually moved into the house there.
Yeah. It's inhabitable, no plumbing in it at all.
And the property is in such disrepair that the church would not be interested in, buying it from you for a very small fee and trying to use it for storage or some other purpose, correct?
No. They would like the parking.
And it's not our job to really commentate on this, but it looks to me like, when I look at the plan, it looks to me like the church could use some parking. It looks like that's the ideal place for it. And it looks like that's probably the highest and best use for that property is parking for the church.
Yes.
If it is truly an active church, and it does get visitors, because I'm not sure where they do park now.
We park along the side of the building and on the edge of the 559 property.
Yeah.
And you can see that
But again, that's really not for our evaluation tonight.
No,
but personal commentary, it looks like it would make a good parking lot for the church.
and that's
And I think what it comes down to is the neighbor to the north okay with that?
Yes, he is. We told him that if we were to tear the house down, that we would probably put a fence along the side between his house and the lot. And he was willing to, he said he'd be happy to help pitch in to put a fence up around the flat property.
And I got to say, I really appreciate all the due diligence you've done in providing the structural report and the commentary and being present for the meeting and really actually giving us all the details on the structure. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Could I make one more note? His concern, and you asked if there was a concern by Don Sapola with the house. He said, I don't want everybody on 24 Highway to see my house. And I told him that we would put a fence along that property line. And he said that he would even share on the expense of that fence. And that's what his concern was, is he just awful lot of traffic going by. And it's not as good a neighborhood as it was when I was a kid. And we bought that church. I was a member of that church back then. I'm a pastor of another church now, so I don't go there. But the thing about it is we bought it in 75 probably, and moved down there. And back then we didn't have a lot of places to park, and it was a mess. But a couple of days when I was there meeting people to look at things, there was a man sleeping on the front porch of the church, and another man who came from around behind the church that had a sleeping bag. So the neighborhood's changed somewhat. So that was his concern. And when we told him that we were planning on building a fence anyway, that took all the concern he had away from it.
Okay. Wendy, because I can't get to it, what is the staff recommendation for this project?
Because typically on demolition, we do commission's discretion. Laid out in the staff report were all of the reasons why it could likely be supported, because of the overall integrity of the house, because it's not eligible for the National Register, because of what was outlined in the structural engineer's report and the photos that were submitted. But ultimately, it just comes down to whether the commission feels like this would be a significant loss for the community, or whether or not you feel like it warrants being torn down.
I was just going to say, just to get moved, I'll move the approval of a certificate of appropriateness. Number one, no directions, no conditions or anything. See if we're anywhere near agreement.
Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
Should we vote?
Well, could I ask a quick question?
Is there any other further comment? Okay.
Yeah, for discussion.
Sorry, Ron. Sorry, I mean to prolong it longer, but it looks from the report, Wendy, that there are few original architectural features. So, is there anything salvageable that could be used for Truman Habitat or somewhere else?
No, not really, especially with the presence of asbestos.
Oh, yeah, I see. Right. There's a very nice large tree in the front. I mean, as I recall, I'd hate to see that cut down as well, but it probably would happen, right?
Yes, it would. It's not in as good a shape as it looks. And there's a whole story about that tree. My dad was working on it with one leg with an electric chainsaw and fell and broke his arm and put himself in the hospital. But that tree is not in good shape, really.
Okay, so we wouldn't need to make that a condition, board, in terms of that we try to save that tree.
No. The only time that the commission reviews mature trees is in the historic district or with a designated property.
I guess I'm a little more comfortable with this, given that it's on the end of a the south end of the neighborhood. It's not like it's a hole in the middle of a row of houses. That makes me a little more comfortable that it's at the very end. But I guess it does raise some questions, though. I can hear the voice of a previous commissioner in my ear right now saying this is a classic example of demolition by neglect. And I say that with all due respect. But I guess that I'm a little, I'm bothered by it in a sense, though, too, in the sense of whenever we lose some of our historic fabric. And the structure engineer, I don't know what his or her qualifications are in terms of historic buildings. I've seen much worse that we have not approved for demolition. Driving by there today, I thought the foundation looked fairly good. The siding looks, overall solid. I'm not a voting member of this commission, though. So I guess I would just ask folks to kind of give it a little bit of pause.
Yeah, I think one key thing you said, Sam, is it's right on the edge. It's right on the boundary of getting some feedback still, but it's right on the edge, and it's right across the street is parking. So it almost seems like a parking lot for the church seems right. Other than a residence there. Other than when you're on the residence and you're at the porch and you're looking across the street, see a parking lot. From a zoning standpoint. I think this one.
I can barely understand you, Ron. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So just to summarize, Sam, Commissioner Grotenhouse was just talking about the fact that if you were using that power as a resident, you would be parking directly across the street. And so the zoning would actually like the parking lot, then to retain it as a house.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Should we vote?
I'm happy to do roll call. Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker.
Yes.
So we have approval with no conditions. What I will do is go back into the approved permit. So thank you both for attending the meeting.
I'm not understanding a lot of that. I'm sorry.
Yes, cutting in.
It was approved.
Okay. And we'll make sure that we do a good job cleaning up and making everything presentable as we can, and keep it to where it will not be an eyesore for the people.
Okay. Thank you both so much for all the work you've done in attending the meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So moving on, can everyone still hear me okay?
Yes.
I know, I think the weather's just affecting our signal just a little bit. So the other item on the agenda is 611 West Maple, and there was a motion made during the last meeting. So this is kind of a continuation of a discussion on February 2nd. The Heritage Commission approved the installation of solar panels, but actually requested that they not be placed on the west elevation. And so we have a representative here from Daybreak Solar who would like to address the commission and maybe some of the concerns. If this is something that there's some way to kind of tweak the motion, we can always come back for economic hardship if that's part of this discussion. But otherwise, representative is here to discuss some of the points that were made at the last meeting and to just explain a little better as to why they were looking to put the panels where they were. And Mr. Bashirs, if you want to be done, you don't need to stay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your consideration and
Thank
time.
you.
Thank
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Very much.
And I'll just turn it over. And were there any questions about the last meeting and about any of the discussion? Otherwise, I'll turn it over and
I was not
Just one
here for the
point,
last
Wendy.
meeting.
What?
My email, and I'm not really seeing like a summary of what we talked about. Sorry.
Yeah, no, the minutes just briefly. That there was a concern by several of the commissioners about the location that you put on the west elevation and the fact that it could be seen from the view of the right of way. And so they asked that the solar panels be potentially put on the garage. The property owner is not in favor of that. He does not want it put on the garage at all. And there would also be some boring that would have to be done, and that would be quite costly, but he just flat out said he does not want it on the garage. He only wants it on the main part of the house and felt like the locations were inconspicuous enough that it wouldn't interfere with the overall integrity. And so we're just here to have a little bit more information and see if there's any additional direction that we can go.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy.
Is everybody able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I definitely did my research and I learned a lot about the house and the historical
Alina, do you want to
district.
introduce yourself?
Oh, my apologies. My name is Alina Young. I'm a project manager at Daybreak Solar in Fort Worth, Texas. We do commercial and residential solar panel installations in Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, and Alaska, and we're expanding to Arizona this year. We are a privately owned company. You know, I speak to the owners daily. So we are, you know, kind of a small business as well. I have never addressed the historical commission, so I appreciate your grace. In my research about this, I do understand the location of the house in proximity to the Truman House, and I understand that the Truman House specifically makes specific efforts to keep the house as authentic as possible to how it was during Truman's original time, even going to leaving the bushes as overgrown. So I definitely respect and appreciate that. In researching about the property, I did notice it's not on the same street as the house, even though it is in the historical district. The original design called for the panels to be located mainly on the west side, the west slope of the roof. The reason for this being, even though it's heavily shaded by trees, all other parts of the roof either have arbors or vents or anything like that. If we were to, I know there was a provision to eliminate the panels on the west side. If we were to do that, his system would go down to 10 panels, which is 3.1 kilowatts. So it would not be financially viable for him. And for him, his biggest reason is to go green and to go solar. When we talked about adding it to the roof, or I'm sorry, to the garage, he said that makes it even more street level view. So if the historical commission's main reason for objecting to the panels would be because visually it does not apply to the aesthetic of the time, putting it on the garage as a solution is actually, it's not, because it makes it even more visible from the street level. We are working on some more photos that I can send to you guys to show just how much of the roof is visible. Because there's a large eave on the house, you actually can't see much of the roof unless you are several hundred yards down the street on your way to the house. I also did some research on the U.S. Department of Interior and the National Parks group, and they do allow for solar panels on historic buildings. I have a few examples of those. I went ahead and posted in the chat a copy of a little Google Slides that I made, and then as well I printed photos for everybody, since I know Wendy said that we can't screen share yet. But I made a copy of their the National Park Service standards, the technical preservation standards from the Secretary of the Interior. They basically said new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. I do believe that the panels would fit under this provision. New work will be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion. So the new work will obviously be differentiated from the old, but as far as compatible with historic materials, that is slightly more difficult. In my research, in my research, I was able to find that the photovoltaic cells were invented in 1941, not in the current iteration that we have today, but let's keep in mind that the president's term was from 45 to 53. So essentially during his presidency, photovoltaic cells were available. So it's not entirely out of the scope of relevant to the time. The next standard from the Department of Interior is Standard 2. Historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The removal of distinctive materials or alteration of features, spaces, and my apologies. Features, spaces, and spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided. So again, we're not talking about altering the property, especially in any permanent way. Our system is completely removable. In fact, many homeowners, when they buy from us, there's two options. Either they can sell the solar panel arrays with the property at an increased property value, or they take it with them. And we also guarantee our work for life, so we actually do the removal as well. So if the homeowner were to sell, he would take the panels with him. And that was something that I had spoken about with him and wanted guarantees. Standard 10 from the National Park Service says, new additions and adjacent or related new construction shall be undertaken in such a manner that if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of the historical property and its environment would be unimpaired. And so, like I said, I do believe that that is something that we are able to do. I'll pause here. Are there any thoughts or questions so far? Okay, thank you. All right, so just a couple more little bits. I'm trying not to kill you guys with data. The U.S. Department of Energy has the National Renewable Laboratory, and they worked with the National Trust for Historic Preservation Guidance in the application of solar panels on historic properties. The report is called Implementing Solar PV Projects on Historic Buildings and in Historic Districts. It is a technical report. And again, I cited that in the presentation I left on the notes in the chat here. Provision 6 says we should avoid solutions that would require or result in the removal or permanent alteration of historic fabric. Again, that's similar to what I just addressed in the last slide. Solar panel installations should be reversible. Use of solar roof tiles, laminates, glazing, and other technologies that require the removal of historic fabric would permanently damage such fabric and must be avoided. So oftentimes, historical commissions or HOAs will ask us to switch to solar roof tiles, which are a little bit lower profile. However, that would mean replacing the current roof. And our solution, having a racking system that is above the roof and is minimally mounted to the studs in the property, would mean that when it's time to take the panels off, there's not actually 1,000 holes. It's an average of 1.5 stanchions per panel, which there's 4 holes in each stanchion. So it really would minimize any structural damage to the house. And basically the only thing needed would be like a roof replacement in the sense of new composition shingle. It says, consider the type and condition of the material upon which installation is proposed, as well as the method of installation and removal down the road. And so, like I said, we did address that. I'm absolutely able to remove the panels in the future, and the homeowner is willing to sign any kind of legal documentation guaranteeing that for the Historical Commission's records. The report also says, place solar panels in areas that minimize their visibility from public thoroughfare. So even though the section of the roof that has the highest sun is actually the front and on the street, we avoided that at all cost. If we were to try to place the panels piecemeal, they would not be aesthetically pleasing by putting like 2 on the east side and 6 on the south side. And so that's why we kind of chunked them all on the west side. It's just an even array. I also want to note that the arrays do not reflect sunlight down. So it's not like driving would draw attention to them. The color of the roof on that property is like a dark gray, and the panels are a dark gray. If the Historic Commission would prefer, we can also do a black on black install, which would mean painting the racking system and the railing that supports the panels black, if that would be less noticeable instead of the gray. But generally, and I have examples, the gray is not extremely noticeable. So the primary facade of a historic building is often the most architecturally distinctive and publicly visible, and thus the most significant and character defining. To the greatest extent possible, avoid placing solar panels on street-facing walls or roofs, including those facing side streets. Installations below and behind parapet walls and dormers or on rear-facing roof are often good choices. So again, the National Trust for Historic Preservation does not say it's absolutely forbidden to place panels on the front, although it is not encouraged. And that is not something that we plan on doing. So again, if you look at Wendy's screen, the right side is going to be the front of the property. The left side is the back, and the top where you see the most panels, that is the west side. And so based on the amount of windows on the roof and just other obstructions, that would be the most aesthetically pleasing and productive place to put the panels for now. And again, easily removable. But we specifically avoided any panels in the front. There's no ground mounts. All of our wiring goes through the attic and down to the main service panel and to the utility meter. Speaking of, we also have approval from the utility and we have permit from the city granted. We are just pending the historic committee's approval. So as an example, I do have some photos, and I've got them printed here, or I've got them on the slideshow. So like on King's Daughter's home in Durham, North Carolina, they have solar panels from the street view. It's not the main front of the property, but that is a historic home, and they were just, it says low flush mounted, low pitch roof installed panels. So since this is an example that came from the National Park Service's website related to solar panels on historical buildings. The same thing, they also gave an example of the Hotel Andaluz in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So for that hotel, they even have panels that, I don't know if you can see, okay, they actually stick up on the roof. So they're visible from the street side. This picture's in black and white, but I highlighted where the panels are on this one. Again, visible from the street. It's really not, as long as it's not the main facade of the property, it doesn't seem to be an issue for the National Park Service. They also require low profiles. Solar panels should be flush mounted no higher than a few inches above the roofing surface and should not be visible above the roof line of a primary facade. So again, because of the overhang on the roof, you're not going to have a lot of visibility from the street unless you're going out of your way to look for it. Here's the King's Daughter's home. And so let's see here. You can kind of see where I've highlighted. Panels are visible from the street for all visitors. As well on the back, this is from the same website. This is a historic home in Vermont, and they allowed for solar panels, which are visible from the street. Okay. Number 5, according to that report, is avoid installations that would result in the permanent loss of significance or character defining features of historic resources. The things of significance for me on that home, and obviously you guys have more experience with this than I do, is the uniqueness of the brick and the stone, the beautiful front porch, all the windows, even coming out of the 3rd story. And again, that would not be something that would be altered by the addition of solar panels on the west side of the property. Let's see here. I had a few examples for you. Let me see. I would like to note that solar panels are on the White House and they are visible from the lawn, the east lawn of the White House. They were first installed in 1979. The system was updated in 2010 and it paid for itself by 2018. So that is another historic home with clearly visible solar panels. They have also been installed at Yellowstone National Park, Grand Canyon National Park, Mount Rushmore National Memorial, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Glacier National Park, Yosemite, Rocky Mountain National Park, the Golden Gate Island, Alcatraz Island, Mesa Verde National Park. I have about 20 item list that came from the National Park Service of historic sites that they allow solar panels to be installed. I also did some research. I know that Independence Power and Light specifically wants to seek energy efficient renewable resources, and that is tied with the city as well as the home. The City of Independence is also participating in SoulSmart, a nationwide U.S. Department of Energy program that recognizes local governments for taking steps to be more solar friendly. So I do know that this is something that's supported by the city, in addition to their permit being granted pending your approval. Going back to the historical timeline, photovoltaic cells were invented in 1941. Let's see here. Mr. Truman was president from 45 to 53. He established the Atomic Energy Commission in 46. The report that I was quoting from, or I'm sorry, a report that I'm about to quote from, was established in 1952 that he started. The Truman Library was built in 57, and the historical district did not begin until 71. So to be clear, the Truman Home National Historic Site was actually not commissioned until 1983, long after photovoltaic cells were first made available. I don't want to diminish that from the uniqueness of the home and the fact that it was kept specific to its original plans. I just want to note that at the time when it was decided to become more of a specific permanent historical location, photovoltaic cells were not new. In 1951, President Truman established the Materials Policy Commission to study U.S. natural resources regarding long-range requirements for supplies like we might need in a prolonged warfare. The report published by the commission in 1952 actually did encourage the administration to move beyond fossil fuels and invest in solar, wind, and renewable resources. So it's not entirely out of historical context, either related to President Truman.
Can I just say that you're pretty? Can I just say that you're pretty awesome with the amount of research that you've actually done with this? And I'm totally fine with this as long as we install 1941 solar panels in the house. I'm kidding.
They weren't actually like photovoltaic cells. They were more solar heated, but they would probably be very large and powered by a donkey or something.
And not work very well. Yeah. Wendy, what are we trying to vote on tonight? I guess what is the?
Yeah, that's why it's listed as discussion and not as a consideration of a COA. I guess, you know, the idea, the thinking behind the discussion was that if you were still not in support of any of the panels going on the west elevation, they can come back in for an economic hardship claim, because obviously regardless of the amount of money that's spent, he can't get the return that he needs on his investment, and cannot generate the amount of power that he would need for his house. So he could come back in if there was some direction you could give, or if there was a discussion where it could be worked out where it would not affect the west elevation and it could be relocated to some other part of the house, then they could probably proceed as, you know, as that discussion proposed. So it was really just to give the property owner some more direction about whether or not the commission was set on this west elevation, or whether or not there was consideration about maybe moving it to a dormer, or if there was any other conversation that could be had without having to extend this process out any further. And if not, then they can come back in as part of an appeals process for economic hardship.
Can I jump on what Wendy said too as well? I did speak to the homeowner, Jack Rokoff, and I let him know that the committee would be fine with if we just didn't put panels on the west side. And he wants to move forward with the project regardless. However, he would prefer for maximum production, and he really wants to go green. He wants to do this on whatever house he's on next. so for him, yeah, I could take out all the panels on the west side, but you could see from the photo that Wendy had on the screen, that is the majority of panels, and that would leave us with 10.
So
Yeah,
he would go forward regardless, though, even though it wouldn't be cost effective, he still would go forward with it?
Well, in this, he is generally for it. Obviously, if it's not cost effective, he's going to back out of it. If it's not cost effective at all, he would have to calculate that into his, he'd have to meet with the sales rep and recalculate. But my understanding is right now he has a $42,000 loan to cover the solar panels. He's got a bank term for 20 years. So he's extremely interested in having the panels. And as you can see from the photo, the majority of them are on the west side.
What were the numbers again, Alina? How many
Yes,
were on the east? How many were on the west?
Let me see here. So it's a total count of 28 panels. The south side has 6. I'm sorry, the east side has 6 and the south side has 4 and the west side has 18.
Can you all see that graphic?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I always thought
I
it,
can't do that, but
Sorry.
I did have a question.
yeah. Sorry. I would, I thought putting on the garage is going to make them more visible from, Lexington and back there in the other. I always felt that way, but that's one opinion.
And
Yes,
I was
sir, and
supportive of the
unfortunately,
original
we would have to.
proposal.
I appreciate that. Unfortunately, if we put it in the garage, we would have to bore through the concrete and to dig to get the wiring and the conduit over to the utility meter by the house.
Yeah.
So that would be more disruptive to the neighborhood and be a longer installation process because he doesn't have a separate meter on the garage. And it would make it even more visible from the street.
That's what I
Right.
said.
I agree. Hey, Alina, I had a question. You said your company was based in Texas, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was just wondering, do we know why the owner chose to go with a Texas company and not one of the local Kansas City solar companies? Like, does anyone know?
I don't have that information. I'm sure he took bids from other sales reps. Let's see here. His sales rep does live in Missouri. I believe he lives in Kansas City. His name is Brad Davidson. And we sell millions of dollars of solar in Missouri. So we are registered LLC in Missouri. We do have licensing from the state, and we are registered as a contractor in cities all over the state. In fact, my installers are in Missouri today. They are doing 3 site surveys and an install in Kansas City and Keatsville, and tomorrow they will be in Belton.
I was just curious. Thanks so much on your presentation, by the way.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's good job. Good job. Good preparation. Does your company have experience, though, with historic residential properties?
I cannot speak for any projects beyond my scope as a project manager. So I have installed on homes that were historic, and so I've never had to speak to a historic commission. I'd be happy to give you guys examples of some of our other installations so you can see up close the type of racking and mounting that we use. But no, I at least for me, I cannot speak that I have a lot of extensive experience with historic homes. It's been done.
I meant your company.
Yeah, I can't speak. I don't know. I should have asked that. Yeah, I know it's been done, but I can't say that it's been done, especially a home as significant as this being located near a presidential house.
Is there any opportunity to utilize the dormers?
We absolutely can. It's just not as aesthetically pleasing, because if we did, and looking at the photo, that would be, if we did not include the front or the west, that's 4 panels. So it would change the system size from 10 to 14 if we completely avoided the front and the west.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is Carol, and I appreciate that you told us about the color match for the roofs and the brackets. And then I was just looking at some other sites. I can't see what the slides are, but just looking in the often talked about is that they're visible but not conspicuous. And that, I think, is something that we definitely need to think about.
Yes, ma'am. And I agree. And that's part of why I wanted to specifically note that our panels are low profile. They're, sometimes you see solar panels and they're like vertical sticking up. These are flush roof mounted panels. The piping that we use is 3.5 inches thick. So it's about this thick. I don't know if you can see behind me. And then there's just like a racking mount. So they do not stick up in any way, like higher than they really need to, higher than really 3.5 inches.
Thank you.
So I was hoping that two of the commissioners that are not here tonight were ones that had the greatest concerns about the location on the west elevation. And I was really hoping that they would be here for these questions to be answered. So if there's no other solution other than that west elevation, I would encourage the property owner to come back with an economic hardship application, and we can bring it to the next meeting and see about, having the discussion for not allowing the property owner to get the highest and best investment out of this installation, and move forward with trying to retain them on the west elevation through an economic hardship application.
Okay, I appreciate you. Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Commission.
So,
Yeah,
Wendy, in terms of process, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask if there was any other discussion from the commission, because that's it doesn't sound like there are any other options other than the dormers, and that may actually be more obtrusive, putting them on the dormers. So I would just ask for any direction from the commission. Would you support coming back in with an economic hardship request?
I personally,
timeline.
well, I don't personally have a problem with it on the west side, so I say no.
I would have been, I'm not a voting member, but I would have been supportive of the original COA application, frankly.
Yeah. In my personal opinion is that it just seemed like at the last presentation, there wasn't representation of the solar panel provider or the homeowner. And we didn't see any options, and we didn't hear any commentary on why the chosen solution was the solution. And now that we hear that, it makes a difference. And so that makes all the difference in the world to me, is that we've actually heard the justification of why they're doing it the way they're doing it.
That's well said, Ron. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. I was not even made aware that that was something that I could attend and help, because we do attend HOA meetings, and we do, speak to other cities and permitting committees for certain types of districts for commercial and residential buildings. I knew that it was coming up and you were discussing it. I wasn't aware that it was open. So I do really appreciate you guys allowing me to take some of your time today.
Yes, the meeting link was sent to the property owner, and the property owner said that he did not want to speak at the meeting, wanted the company to do that. And so I think there was just a miscommunication between, what the property owner was choosing to do, and so we did not have any representation consequently.
Okay.
So
there is no vote. We just table this to next time, Wendy, is that?
Well, we can't, technically we can't table it because there was a motion made and it was made, but with conditions. So in order to follow our guidelines for processing applications, we basically have to come back in. The only appeal process we have is economic hardship. So the hope was that if there was some further discussion on this and the property owner decided to come back in for economic hardship, it wouldn't be a waste of that property owner's time to go through that process. If the commissioners were basically a hard and fast no, you can tell us, all the information that you want, but we still don't want to see it on that west elevation. There wasn't a lot of additional information that could be provided at an economic hardship level. At this point, though, there's quite a bit more information that was shared. And so I feel like that would be the best way to go, is through an appeals process through economic hardship.
No, that sounds fair to me too. I mean, it's because I'm all for green energy and sustainable practices. And if there's anything we can do to make it happen, then we should make it happen.
Yep, I agree.
I agree.
So, Alina, I can send you that other application. It would basically put it on the next agenda for April. which is the first Tuesday in April. I'd be happy to send the link again, and I am more than happy to follow up 2 and 3 times with the other commissioners who were not in attendance tonight to make sure we can get a quorum for that night.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I will, I'll touch base with the homeowner. He is waiting for me to call and let him know how we went today. He felt that he couldn't speak sufficiently on the solar program. So that's why he wanted me to kind of come together with you guys for this. So I will call him after this and let him know that that's an option. And with his approval, I'll move forward with that application.
Yeah. We appreciate your background and groundwork.
Very much so.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you very much.
And
Wendy,
if
what
anybody
happened
wants
to
to,
the
let me know.
Wendy, what happens to the original COA that we voted on last month? Because it was approved subject to the condition that no panels are placed on the west elevation. Does that mean that there's no COA anymore? Does the COA process just kind of go to the side, and now we go with the economic hardship process?
Well, in a roundabout way, that was a denial of the original proposal. So not being able to comment on it originally and not being able to have a discussion for any alternatives that were amenable to the property owner, then we can go through and basically use it as a denial of the original proposal and appeal on economic hardship.
There's no way to
To appeal, do I need to reapply with another COA?
It's a different application, basically the same process. Yes, and I'll send a link to the application, and I can answer any questions about that process. That's no problem.
Okay. So I couldn't hear very well. Sorry, Wendy. So was that you, Kaylin, that suggested we maybe craft a new COA as opposed to doing the economic hardship, or you don't want to go that direction?
That wasn't me, but since I wasn't at the last meeting, I'm kind of playing catch up, but I'm kind of confused. If we're all in agreement that it's okay that it's on the west side, why does he have to apply for an economic hardship when that's not the case?
Well, so the way that it was approved was that they could proceed as proposed with no panels on the entire west elevation. And as you could see from the images that I was showing, the vast majority of the panels are on the west elevation.
Okay.
So he can't get any kind of really return on investment, either through solar input or on the actual monetary investment, if all those panels are taken out of the picture.
Okay. So it really does become an economic argument at this point.
It somewhat does, yeah. And and really the hope was that and again, the 2 of the people who were the most vocal are not here this evening about concerns about that west elevation. So I was hoping that we'd have more of a dialogue with them about possible alternatives. But because an actual motion was taken and the item wasn't tabled, it's finalized. So I have to move on through an appeals process of some sort.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Makes sense.
Question. So if I resubmit for an economic hardship, and then you guys again are going to meet in April, is this going to go through the same vote, or would I need to present again just more details about the economics of removing panels from the west side?
Well, if you have the exact same people, they have heard your presentation. Ideally, I would have several other commissioners here who would be able to voice their concerns as to why they didn't support it first time, and there would be an opportunity to make that argument to them as well. And
well, I promise everyone who's here, I would not make the same presentation twice. If it's an economic example, then I would actually be approaching it specifically from the financial standpoint of how many kilowatts per hour we're losing in production without the west panels.
Yes, that would be information that I would insert into the staff report.
That's right. You shouldn't have to go through everything you did tonight again.
No, but I do have to ask. Go ahead, Wendy.
Sorry, I was just going to say the one good thing I'll say is that this is recorded. So if the property owner or the Heritage Commissioners who were not in attendance this evening would like to watch, they can listen to your presentation. Several other questions had to do with whether or not it was a low profile panel.
Yes.
You know, the color, why you wouldn't go with, you know, the actual replacement of the roof with solar panel, you know, composition shingles of some sort, solar panel shingles. So because you've covered all of that, I would encourage them to watch your presentation, and then additional information could be added at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I also want to plan it in your head, like I said, that we can come up with some legal paperwork for the homeowner to sign to guarantee that if he were to sell the property, he would take the panels with him and replace the roof as well as, you know, like I said, we've done black on black panels, but if this roof is a specific color gray, that is something that we can look into industrial and powder coating paint to make sure that the panels are even closer to the actual roof color.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask is based on the original proposal to what you know now and all the research you've done, is there something you've changed? And maybe outline at the next presentation, outlining what you would propose to change based on the original proposal to the future proposal. What is that?
As far as the proposal goes, I mean, that design is the most economically and efficient design for that property, aside from putting panels on the front. As far as like the panel placement, I could not change that. My presentation would change if we are doing an economic hardship application, just to show that these 28 panels should produce X number of kilowatts per hour on an average day. If we were to reduce it down to 10, it would produce this much with an investment of $42,000. It would take this long to pay it off versus, you know, the other amount, as well as,
is there a low profile versus black versus gray versus something like that has changed that from the original proposal to what you would now propose?
Yes, sir. I am now also proposing the option to legal paperwork, guaranteeing that the homeowner would remove the panels after he moves, as well as painting the racking system and anything that holds the panels, like the framing. I'd be happy to amend my proposal to include that information.
And I think that might go somewhere. I think that might be of value in presenting it that way.
Thank you.
I think also the fact that it's a reversible is a very good point to bring up as well.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, it certainly is.
What qualifies as a hardship? How can we prove that it's a hardship versus just an inconvenience? Is there a difference?
Well, yes, it's very specifically on an appeal process and economic hardship.
Okay.
And so that exactly what she's outlining is what we'll focus on in the staff report, to highlight that the property owner's investment is not a good return. And that basically the fact that he owns a historic property in a historic district is keeping him from getting a good return on that investment, even though it's something we encourage in the district.
Okay, thank you.
And I will agree, like I said, the property owner has expressed to me that he would like to have solar panels on any property he has. So if he were not in this district, he would already have the panels installed on his house by now, since we have approved permit and approval from Independence Utilities.
Okay. I think it's also useful maybe to have a kind of a bottom line in terms of the minimum number of solar panels that he's willing to have on the west elevation and still have this an economically viable project, you know.
Present some options.
Yeah.
Right.
Crunch numbers. Yeah, and not to speak for my peers, but in the previous meeting, I got a strong sense that there was the visibility issue was a problem. And again, not to put words in their mouth, but that's what I gathered. Although I didn't respectfully agree. But you know, we can't eliminate visibility, but we can minimize visibility. That's one of the slides that you presented here tonight. And the perfect is the enemy of the good. You know, and not to pontificate here, but, you know, if we want to encourage sustainability and green energy, you know, I think this is exactly the kind of project we should be supporting. So I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, and I also want to point out what we do, obviously try the best that you can to keep the district architecturally in compliance with the home. There are Hummers on the street. So, you know, having, obviously, yes, there are Hummers parked on the street. So it's not, you know, not like you look up, you know, and the house is fairly tall. It's on a hill and it's 2 stories. So at least, you know, 25 feet. If you look up 25 feet as you're driving in your air conditioned vehicle and you notice that something is amiss, you're also passing other vehicles with automatic transmission. So that would also not be.
Not Model Ts though. I don't know if they're really old enough.
Right. That's true. But yeah, so that was the only thing is, yeah, absolutely. I definitely understand. And I did more research about the home and definitely trying to preserve the character original to that when the president was there. But then at the same time, there's so many, you're definitely not obviously there because someone's motorcycle is going to be zooming by probably.
So Alina, if that gives you enough information, I'll send you that link. And again, I apologize that we don't have our full commission here this evening, but I'll encourage them to watch the video so that they can understand. I think quite a few of their questions were answered with what you presented about a low profile panel, about the fact that you chose this side, even though there are trees there, you chose this side specifically. And so hopefully that will answer the general questions they have from the last meeting, and then the additional information will be based on economic hardship. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I thank you all for that. You know, this, again, we have not had requests for solar panels that have been prominently placed on the roof of a property in the historic district and right around the corner from the Truman home. So this is a little bit of a learning curve for us, but I think based on the information she presented and the fact that the property owner is still in support of getting the best investment that he can with this, then economic hardship is a good way to go, and the direction that that the property owner has now is you know, valuable for them to proceed with that appeals process. I don't have anything else. We don't have any other members of the public here. Was there anything from the commission?
No, I think it's been a good discussion. Sorry.
I just want to apologize for holding everybody up. It's just old age. That's all I can explain.
Good to have you, Dwayne.
Right.
And this was an important issue tonight. Good discussion, I think. Is there a possibility, Ron, that you can stay on at least through the April meeting, since you're familiar with this issue, and I think it's an important one, as maybe a, you know, maybe a trend, a precedent setter?
I'm not doing anything else. I'm just sitting around waiting for these Heritage Commission meetings, so I'm good. Yeah, absolutely. No,
great.
I'm happy to stay as long as I need to. It was a good discussion tonight, and it was a good discussion last month too, I thought.
Yeah.
It was.
And I'm really glad that the homeowner actually didn't just like bail out and say, okay, we're not doing that. You know, I'm glad that they said, hey, let's go for this, and they sent their person in to fight for the cause. I think that's kind of cool.
Well,
Yeah, he very specifically said that he did not want to attend because he just couldn't speak to any of the technical information that you were likely to be asking questions about. And so he said that he saw the link, but that he decided, you know, not to attend because he wanted someone from the company to come, but then there was no conversation about how that would take place. So I'm glad that she could come back during this meeting and at least explain a little bit more about the process.
Yeah.
My question is, when can we do this in person?
Yeah.
I get my second vaccine shot next week. So you want?
Hey, good for you.
I get my second next week too. By the way, yeah.
Sounds like
I feel invincible now.
You know, we're just waiting on guidelines from both the city and the county about public meetings. I don't think the council is meeting in person yet, and they haven't opened it up for any of us. So we're making the most of what we've got. But I think at least the discussion was really good this evening, and you know, one of the first meetings that we've been able to have some participation from property owners and applicants, so that was extremely helpful.
Well, I thought
it's fortunate that we don't have the whole commission here, because I think they would have really appreciated it.
Yeah, I agree.
The family, you know, that was asking for the demolition, I mean, they, you know, they're not professional, but they did their homework too. They did a good job in presenting it. I appreciate that. You know, they did the best they could.
Fantastic. I
Yes.
thought that was fantastic.
Yeah.
They went above and beyond, in my opinion.
Honestly,
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
although I'll be honest, I totally agree, but at the same time, I kind of didn't want to be distracted by that a little bit, and I don't take that the wrong way, but to keep the focus on the property.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't there, but I mean, but you know me, I usually ask about the trees.
I know you do. That's why I asked.
Always about the trees.
I know you would, Dwayne. That's why I asked about the tree. I knew you would.
Yeah.
You know, since my term is coming to an end, I have such a hard time not providing personal commentary and trying to go by the guidelines. You know what I mean? And really like understanding what the guidelines are and what our decision is really based on, and not providing what I really feel as my own personal feelings. That's the hardest part about this whole thing.
Right.
Yeah. That's true. It is about the property, but it's about the people too. It's kind of hard to extract the two sometimes. Yeah.
It is. It's hard to keep the letter of the law from kind of your personal opinion.
And Kalen, on that solar panel issue, I think you made a really good point about local companies, and it does make you wonder if he had, you know, kind of vetted any local solar panel companies.
That was my first question, and I was really excited to ask it, but really disappointed that we didn't really get an answer. So I was hoping that we would get one, but it was just really a personal curiosity, I guess, not much to do with the actual yes or no.
You know, a lot of companies though have their salespeople in different areas and work different states and areas, but their actual manufacturing and production is, you know, made hundreds of miles away. You know, I don't think it's particularly unusual. Some people may be selling locally, but they probably have them made somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I was trying to do my quickest research in those like 10 minutes. I was Googling on my phone, but I really couldn't find anything out more.
And they're probably going to use a local crew anyway, a local, you know, so it might mean jobs for local people, but if it's approved.
But that's beyond the scope and powers of this commission.
That's right.
So are there any questions from the Heritage Commission on any HP items?
No.
I will let you know that we've had a lot of requests about the Thompson plantation at the meetings, and I'll tell you that they are trying to write citations, but they're having trouble establishing exact ownership. Not necessarily who says they own the property, but who they can tie it to. Particularly like a specific address where they could send those. And so they're in the process of trying to do that, but in discussions with the property owner's representative, they are still interested in trying to find another owner. So it may ultimately succumb to being demolished because it's been open to the elements, but at this point they are still looking for a different owner. And this is the plantation home that sits on 40 Highway.
Right.
So that, just to give you a brief update on that, we did meet for Preservation Month, and it looks like we're going to have probably 5 or 6 virtual lectures about a variety of topics. And so I'll be pulling that calendar together soon and making sure that we can kind of get that organized for different dates throughout May. We are going to also, because it's the bicentennial, we're going to do some additional events toward August and into the fall. And I'll also say that we have the hopes for at least 2 applications for Preserve Independence Awards. And so I'm hoping in the April meeting, we'll have some applications that I can email you for consideration for Preservation Awards. So we'll have election of officers, we'll have preservation awards, and then we'll have this probably economic hardship application all coming in April. If Ron is no longer here, we don't have a chair. And so we need to consider who's able to attend on a regular basis and who is interested in serving as chair, would like to encourage discussion, but maybe wants to take more of a back seat as chair in the discussion process, because that's typically the role of the chair, is to really facilitate the discussion. But we will need a new chair, vice chair, and secretary at the next meeting. So something to think about if you're interested. Other than that will get us at least moving forward with Preservation Month again in May, and an opportunity to celebrate our bicentennial a little bit. And the Truman Depot project is likely on hold. So they're still wanting to move forward with the project, but it looks like our timeline may be pushed back a little bit. So as soon as I get more details on that, it looks like the groundbreaking will be postponed. As soon as I have information about when it's rescheduled, I will let you all know, and you will all be invited.
Okay. So the groundbreaking is probably not going to happen around your birthday?
It is not looking that way, no.
We're not sure we're going to be able to reopen the Truman Library by that time either. We're going to shoot for it, but not so sure at this point.
Other than that, there are no 106 reviews at this time, and I don't have anything else to contribute, but I'll keep you all posted on our Preservation Month events as we get closer.
When's the next meeting, Wendy? When's the next meeting of the Preservation Month Committee?
Yeah, it's going to be probably right at a month. So we'll be looking at around March 23rd.
Okay.
And the link will be sent out for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chair, if there's nothing else, we can adjourn.
Okay, do we have a motion?
You hear me? I move.
Can I attend the next meeting just as a bystander?
You
Let
could,
you
but
speak during the
we very much appreciate you staying if no one is added in the next 2 weeks.
You guys just let me know. And if I just need to attend as a member of the public, I'm kind of curious, so I might do that. So let me know. Keep me on the email chain. Let me know.
Be happy to do that.
Yeah,
All right.
that'd be great. Good, Ron.
All right.
Ron,
Do I have a motion? A motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
Me too.
Should we vote? Me too. Should we? All those in favor say aye. Seconded. Yeah, Kaylin seconded.
What if I could?
Well, we are all done for the evening. I thank you all for your time, and especially for rescheduling. Unfortunately, we could not get our notice in the paper on time, and so it pushed us back into the second week of March. But thank you all so much for accommodating the schedule change.
No worries.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And otherwise, have a good evening, everyone.
Same to y'all.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.